This week, we're going to pick up where we left off last week. We're going to do the second part of the interview with Ken Mary, so stick around. It's good. You know, one of the things I respect so much about you is your attention to detail in the mix. Could you give me a quick kind of understanding of how do you, when a producer throws you a mix, where do you start? Where do you start?
Well, first thing I'll do is I would listen to, like, if they have a rough, you know, like let's say they've done a rough mix, and I am always interested, especially with somebody that has spent months and months with a song, conceivably. I mean, sometimes it's a matter of days or weeks, but sometimes it's months they've worked on the song, and they have a certain vision that they had in their head that they're trying to get out. So first thing I would do is listen to any roughs that were done. And then the next thing I would do is open up the session and then just listen to all the individual tracks, not necessarily mix them, but just kind of get them in some relative level to where I can actually hear what's going on in the song and hear the parts that are going on in the song. And once I do that, you know, then it's really a question of, you know, okay, making some selections and going, yeah, you know, just like what we just talked about, you know, this part's great, but it's conflicting with this. Let's just focus in on this part. Let's remove a couple of these things. It's a little jumbly in here. Let's take that out. This needs to be more full. You know, what can we pull up that really, you know, makes this section sound bigger? So, you know, you have to kind of decide what the flow of the song is, what instrumentation is going to be there. And then at that point, you know, once you have a clear idea in your head of what it's going to sound like, because I think one of the things as a mixer that you have to be able to do is, you know, what I do a lot of times, I'll just close my eyes and listen to the tracks, and then I will close my eyes and just listen to what I want it to sound like at the end, and kind of figure out where things are going to be placed. You know, do I want to hear that sound coming from over here? Do I want it coming from over here? You know, is it back further in the mix? Is it right in my face? You know, where are all these things going to be placed in the mix? And so once I've sort of made that decision, you know, then I would actually start the mechanical process of going through and going, okay, here are the rhythm tracks. You know, here's the bass and drums. Let's get those sounding great. Let's get the relative levels between that. You know, let's pop up a vocal. You know, that's probably what I would do next in a lot of situations, especially with pop music, is, you know, after those rhythm tracks are up, boom, the vocals on there, getting some nice EQ, getting some nice compression, and then start filling in the blanks with some of the other musical instruments and some of the other parts that they've chosen to put down.
Do you ever have a time where you get a track that you feel almost as too sparse, so that it doesn't have enough instrumentation filled in? What do you do with that?
Well, when you run into that situation, I mean, usually what I would do in that situation is I would call the producer and say, hey, you know, this is sounding a little blank to me in here. Do you mind if I put a keyboard in here? Or do you mind if I put in some percussion? Or do you mind if I mess with your painting?
Okay.
You know, it's basically what I would be saying. I mean, do you mind if I put this in? If they're like, you know, yeah, you know, we really don't want you to mess with it. I mean, you know, again, you're just the mixer here. You're not the producer.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
You know, you're not the one making the final decisions in that role. So in that role, if somebody said, hey, I really don't feel comfortable with that, I want you to just work with what's there, then I would probably try to fill it out with some effects or some delay, or, you know, utilize something in the palette that's there already to try to just make it bigger and make it sound like there's more going on than there actually is going on.
And you can, you know, that just kind of made me think, I guess if like I had a simple drum groove or something like that, and it felt a little sparse, that, yeah, I guess putting some kind of delay or a throw on it or something like that that you could actually pan. I guess you could pan your throws and delays and stuff like that to kind of make it feel.
Sure. Well, you can actually, let's say you took a drum groove and then you put some sort of delay on it, and then you lo-fied it and then put it off in the background somewhere. It would almost sound like a percussion instrument. So,
oh, yeah.
I mean, you could do a lot of different things. I mean,
Sure.
There's a lot of different things you could do to affect a mix that sounds too empty. But what I always tell, you know, if I am working with a producer and I've worked with them more than one time, I always tell them it's better to hand me too much than too little. Like, I'd rather have tracks I'm sifting through and going, well, this is cool, yeah, this is now starting to make things too jumbly and I need to make more space here. I'd rather make space than have to fill it up, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'd rather have more options to choose from and then start taking things away as opposed to having to create sound sources to fill up empty space.
Right. Let's move on to advice that you would give. You know, I know you work with a lot of Christian artists and bands. What are common mistakes, and what are some advice you would give bands or songwriters that are trying to make a name for themselves? And now, I guess what I'm saying is, since you've got so much mixing and producing and instrumentation experience, you've probably seen a lot of people come, you know, rise up and fall and rise up and go nowhere. What are some things that you would say, hey guys, I know you're trying to make a name for yourself. You really need to pay attention to this.
Well, there's an old adage in the business that says it's the song, it's the song, it's the song. And as much as I'd like to deny that, the truth is it really is about songs. I mean, when you think about, you know, okay, it's the music business, what are you marketing? And think about this, when you go see an artist live, like whether it's, you know, Paul McCartney or whether it's Beyonce, what are you going to see? I mean, you're going because you're wanting to hear certain songs. So yeah. My biggest advice is very simple. Just try to make the greatest music that you can possibly make. Because if you do make great music and you combine that with great marketing, then you've really got something. If you have, you know, great marketing combined with not so great music, it's almost like pushing a wheelbarrow up a hill as opposed to rolling down a hill. Like if you have great music and great marketing, man, now you're just, you know, you're a snowball that's going to start and it's going to roll down the hill on its own and gain momentum and gain fans. Yeah. And by the same token, you know, if you know, you can do all of the other things right in marketing and in the world, and if it just doesn't have legs, if it doesn't, you know, if it's not great music, then, you know, it probably is not going to happen. I mean, I'm not going to say it never happens, because I think there's probably examples of some not great music that has been very successful. Yeah. I think it's the exception, not the rule. I think most of the time, I'd say, you know, probably 98% of the time, if you're hearing a hit song, there's something valid going on there. There's something that moved people in the lyric or the groove, or, you know, the emotion that was coming off of that music. You know, generally speaking, things are hits for a reason. And so that's really my greatest advice to someone would be, just make the greatest possible music you can. Focus your energies there, because people get wrapped up in, you know, making T-shirts and getting their tour bus and playing shows and all these other things that are important. And I mean, certainly those things are important, but they're not nearly as important as the reason people are coming to see you, which is the music.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. And lastly, I was going to ask if you could give us a couple pieces of advice on gear, both in tracking and mixing. Like, give me 3 go-to pieces of gear when you're tracking and 3 go-to pieces of gear when you're mixing. Okay,
3 pieces of go-to gear tracking would certainly be like a Neumann U87, AKG 414, C12. I mean, we're talking microphones here. Okay. Sometimes Sennheiser 421. These are like the kind of mics that I like to use a lot. Even Shure 57, you know, people laugh at that mic, but that mic has been used on more hit records than any other microphone probably. I mean, I wouldn't use it for vocal, but you know, it's great on things like guitars, snare drums. You know, there's a host of uses for that mic. It's just a great all-around, inexpensive, great mic. Yeah. When you talk about preamps, I'd be thinking things like Vintech, Neve, Avalon, API. Like, these are all preamps that I do have, and I love the sound of all of them in different ways, and they all have different advantages and sometimes disadvantages, just depending on what you're recording. Compression is a huge, huge deal.
Do you compress while you're tracking?
Well, in my opinion, yes, because I think a lot of times when people use Pro Tools, they think, oh, you know, it has a compressor in it, and so I don't need to really worry about compressing. But I like to get the sound that I'm trying to get going to Pro Tools. I like to run through about $10,000 worth of gear before it even hits Pro Tools. I mean, I'll run through like a U80, I'll give you an example of a vocal chain, running through a U87, going into a Vintech preamp, into a TubeTech compressor, into an Apogee A to D converter, going into Pro Tools. Sure. And so the chain, by the time you hit Pro Tools, there's a great sound going on before you hit Pro Tools. Yeah. I think trying to get a great sound after you've hit Pro Tools is not optimal. But getting back to tracking gear, love the Distressor, love the CL1B, LA4 Uri stuff. I mean, that's a great compressor too. I've got a couple of those. Those would be the kind of compressors I'd be thinking of for mixing. I'll have 3 little letters. One of them's S, the second one's S, the last one's L. I think an SSL, to my ear, and when I bought mine, and I don't know if you want to show a picture of it on your show.
Absolutely,
there or whatever.
Yeah. No, I'll pull it up.
Maybe pull up a picture of the SSL. Yeah. But I bought it in 2003, I believe, and I thought my plan is it's going to pay for itself in about 5 years. And in 2000, I figured about 2008 it would be a total boat anchor, and it would probably serve as a coral reef out there in the ocean somewhere that fish can build onto. Yeah. And it's pretty funny because now we're in 2015, and it's still, to my ear, a great piece of gear. The compression in it, the EQ in it, there's just something about running through that console that when you take 40 tracks or 50 tracks or 60 tracks and you just split them all up going through analog processing, that alone, to me, makes, especially stuff like dance music, EDM, pop, it just makes it so much more organic than just in Pro Tools. I think it gives you a deeper listening field, a wider listening field, and again, just a much more organic. It just sounds more like real music to me than stuff that's mixed in Pro Tools. Yeah. Now, I think that Pro Tools is catching up. Pro Tools is getting better and better, and I've heard some mixes done in Pro Tools that I feel, and here's the scary thing, because a lot of guys are like, yeah, I mixed it all in Pro Tools. Well, yeah, but they also went through about $10 gajillion worth of outboard gear going into Pro Tools, and they're also running through some really high-end mastering gear coming out of Pro Tools. So usually if you hear something that's even mixed in Pro Tools that sounds really great, chances are there was some great analog processing involved in there somewhere. So, yeah. But as far as the mixing goes, certainly the SSL, certainly things like the LA4s and the Distressors. I do like a lot of the Yamaha effects processors for delays and choruses and things like that. So, and obviously some of the Lexicon equipment has, they have great effects outboard gear as well. So,
what about somebody that doesn't have a big budget yet? And
okay, so they're just working within Pro Tools?
Yeah, they're a home studio and they want a good solid vocal chain, and they maybe have a budget of $5,000 or something. Okay. What would you say? Give me one mic, one compressor, and one preamp.
For $5,000, it's going to be a little tough with $5,000, but I think I would go, for sure preamp, I'd probably just go Vintech. The reason I go Vintech, I have a vintage Neve module. The reason that I like the Vintech is they actually found the exact same parts suppliers that were originally for Neve, and they basically duplicated the Neve chain. So when you buy a Vintech, you're almost buying a vintage Neve. The only difference is all the electronics are updated, and there's not a lot of noise. Like with my vintage Neve, they're a little finicky. It's an older piece of gear. With the Vintech stuff, you don't have to worry about that. It's all new. It sounds great. Sounds very similar to the Neve modules. So I would say Vintech. I probably would go CL1B, which is a TubeTech compressor, but that there alone, I think the Vintech's probably about $1,600 or $1,800. The TubeTech's probably about another $2,000. So right there, we wouldn't be left with a whole lot for a microphone. But
how much are U87s?
Well, U87s I think are running about a little over $3,000 now.
Oh, they're that much.
But they do. There is another one that I don't have, but it's the less expensive Neumann. I forget what it's called. It's not like it doesn't look like the full Neumann. I'm just blanking off the top of my head. Do you have? I thought you had one of those. Do you have one of those?
No, I still haven't. I still haven't dropped the money on that. My latest one is actually a Sennheiser. It's an older mic. I can't even remember what the name of this thing is. I'm using it right now. The 421 Sennheiser.
421.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Am I the one that told you about that?
I've had several people tell me about them. Yeah. Do you like them?
What's funny about the 421? It's not a condenser mic.
No, it's
dynamic.
not.
And they use it in radio a lot. And it's really funny. I have a funny story about that mic because I had a female vocalist and we did the scratch vocal on the 421. I think because I had it set up for a radio session or something like that. It was set up for somebody doing a radio voiceover. And so we ended up doing her vocals through the 421 just because it was a scratch vocal and we were just going to do a quick pass and I didn't want to bother changing the mics. And it turned out we loved the sound so much that when it came time to do the actual vocals, we ended up using the 421. So that would be the mic. If I had a really tight budget, I think those run about $350.
Yeah, that's about
I would
right.
absolutely, like if I could only buy one mic, I probably would buy the Sennheiser 421 and then get a really good preamp and a really good compressor. I mean, it's not going to be great for every single voice, but it's certainly going to be, for the money that you spend on it, I really haven't heard anything that sounded better.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. In fact, I had been tracking with Crystal on a Rode. It's a condenser Rode mic. It was about a $300 or $400 mic I've had for a while. And it was always so freaking bright. It was so just... Brittle, yeah. I never cared for it, and I've been using this one on her voice, and it's like, man, I don't even have a good preamp right now. I'm just running in through my interface, which has a built-in preamp, and it sounds great. It's not where I want it yet. I still want it a better sound, but it is light years better from that Rode, just in the change of the mic. So I absolutely agree with you on this. But yeah, you had told me about it, and several other people had.
Yeah, I don't think you can beat it. I mean, like I said, they use it a lot in radio production, and so there's a reason. I mean, it's a really great sounding mic, and it keeps the it's not an omnidirectional mic as well, which a lot of the condenser mics, they have most of the major ones will have settings that you can make them more focused, but certainly a lot of them will absorb more of the field, and that Sennheiser 421 does a nice job of really collecting what's there and not a lot of the background either. So for home studios, I think it's probably a very ideal mic.
It's great, yeah.
Do we get paid by Sennheiser for this at all?
We'd better.
We get paid from Sennheiser.
What the hell, man? No, I think that's about it, man. I don't have many more questions. I just think we've...
I thought you were going to ask me about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Wasn't that on there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a joke, Ken. You got to learn to take a joke.
Oh, because I actually went back and reviewed the Ninja Turtles. So
did you? Which one's your favorite?
Well, now that we're going to talk about it, Michelangelo is my favorite because he's kind of like the comic relief. He's the smart aleck of the group.
Plus, he twirled things like you do.
Yeah, so he's my guy.
I was just watching your drum video on Vimeo. And so I'm glad they haven't taken that down with the Matrix stuff.
Yeah, they haven't taken it down yet.
I love it, man. I was just watching it today, and I was like, man, you are so freaking good. It's like candy for my eyes to just watch you play. It's amazing. Amazing.
Thank you so much. Those are very kind words, and I really appreciate it. It's one of those things, when I did the video, you're always scared because people just have such short attention spans.
Oh, yeah.
And watching a guy play drums for 6 minutes is kind of like, it can get pretty boring. So
not to me.
It's I was trying to make it exciting, but at the same time, watching anybody do anything for that long nowadays is kind of. I was trying to figure out how to cut it down, and I think we ended up cutting it down by, I don't know, like a minute or maybe like 40 seconds or something. But it's really tough. Like we went back in and tried to shorten it up.
That's hard.
Very tough. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I think probably what really helps is the fact that it sounds really good. You've got some great. I mean, you can hear certain toms panned different places, and then on top of that you've got great camera angles. Like when you're flipping, you've got a camera up here, and that really keeps the interest, I think, when you can switch cameras and stuff.
Sure. Well, I can say thank you to Brad White and Square Pictures for that. He was actually the one that filmed that,
nice.
and I think he did a great job.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
I agree with you. I mean, for drumming, he made drumming look pretty exciting.
Is he here in the Valley?
Yeah, he's in Scottsdale, actually.
Oh, okay. I may need him sometime then.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's awesome. So where can people find you?
Where can they find me? They can find me on Facebook. I believe if they just search for Ken Mary on Facebook, they can find me there.
Okay.
I also have my official drums page. Since you did mention drumming, drumming is a major part of my life. If they go to Ken K. Mary on Facebook, they can hit me up there. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. And then of course my website, which is sonicfish.com. That's sonicphish.com.
Fish, as in Fister.
As in the band Fish.
Yeah,
like,
as in the band Fish. I was going to say Fister faucets. I was changing a faucet the other day, and I'm like, that is the worst name for a faucet.
That's a bad name. Yeah, we're going to go with. I'll agree with you on that. That's not a great name for a product.
Not a great one. Well, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate this. This is awesome. I learned a lot, and I hope my millions of fans will learn a lot too. So,
well, it was a lot of fun, and I hope your podcast grows and grows.
I hope so. Thanks so much, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, see you.
All right, later. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview as much as I did. I always learn a lot of stuff from Ken Mary. He's one of my huge mentors. Thank you, Ken, so much for doing this interview. I really appreciate it. Guys, go check out his website, sonicfish.com. I have it in the show notes below. As always, stay frosty, keep writing. Peace.
I like that you're weird and my hair has your scent. Tattoos of broken wings across your perfect shoulders. Take me to your place, show me your art. Frescoes and chocolate. I'll paint a picture for you.